Too many Christians identify themselves with the sick trying to get healed. You need to change that thought. You are not the sick trying to get healed. You are the healed of the Lord that the devil's trying to make sick.
A couple of housekeeping things. At the front of your manual, you're going to find some pages 11, 12, 13. These are important notices, numbers 1, 2. Yeah, in fact, they're on both sides, so that makes it easy.
Page 16, it is on the back of one.
Okay. If you want to fill these out whenever you get a chance here today, and you can just tear them out of your manual and we'll send them back in. The whole purpose to these is, as Curry explained one time, the reason they're there is because it cost him $15,000. It's what he had to pay to someone claiming to be part of John G. Lake Ministries, was doing things that they shouldn't have been doing and ended up causing some problems for people who filed a lawsuit and named John G. Lake Ministries and as part of one of the defendants in the lawsuit. And in order to extricate themselves from the suit, they had no connection with this person. The person had never been to JGLM, had never heard the DHT, had never been part of JGLM whatsoever. It cost them $15,000 to extricate themselves from this lawsuit. So that's why they have these legal notices in there. Page, I think, 7 through 16, and they're on both sides. If you just want to give your name and address and date on the first one, I suppose, well, yeah, just fill it out. The question comes up a lot of times with divine healing and doing ministry, doing street ministry. What about someone who asks you medical advice? Should I have this procedure? Should I throw away my pills? Should I step on my glasses? Should I, you laugh. All of these different questions that have to do with their sickness, but it has to do with their medical treatment. And whenever they ask me, I have a very easy answer to that. It's, I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm here to pray for you to be healed. I can't give you any advice about what to do with your medical. You're going to have to ask your doctor about that. All I can do is command healing in your body and command the problem to leave and for your body to be healed. That's what I do. I don't give advice, medical or otherwise. I certainly don't give medical advice. And I've had people begging me for medical advice. One time I was on the phone with this lady that we had prayed for. My wife and I had prayed for her. She had a problem with her back, and she wanted to know, she goes to the chiropractor, and when she's done with the chiropractor, she's in more pain than when she got there. And she really wanted me to tell her, stop going to the chiropractor. And I really wanted to tell her that. But I just pressed my lips together and let her talk on the phone, and she kept going on and on about the different aspects of the situation. And as it turned out, one of the reasons she kept going back to this chiropractor was he was cute. And I found out she was going like 4 days a week. And I'm just listening to this and just and she's going on and on about, and when she's done, and he's really nice, and he's a pastor's son, and he's this and he's that, and but I just feel so bad. I'm in such pain when I leave, and and I said, well, how's your back? Oh, my back's fine. Well, that's what we had prayed for originally. I said, well, that was nice. I'm glad you told me about it finally. And she finally came around to, I think I'm just going to go once a week. And I said, well, I think you just answered your own question. We don't give medical advice, and I can't really stress this hard enough, because you're going to run into situations, I've got stage 4 cancer, do I get chemotherapy or not? And my answer is the same, I don't know. I can't tell you what to do. Well, my whole family wants me to get chemotherapy. I understand, I can't tell you what to do. Well, what about this? I understand, I can't tell you what to do. We're here to command the cancer to leave, and that's where our faith is, and that's what we're going to see. All of these other questions you're going to have to answer between you and your doctor. So, not exactly a bunny trail, but it's an important thing to understand when you're out there and actually ministering to people, ministering healing. That is the best answer to that question. Now, I've got a question here from someone. The Bible speaks of God putting sickness and disease on people in the Old Testament. How do you explain this? As God never, I assume that's changes and is good. Okay, first of all, let's start with sickness and disease. John Lake once described sickness and disease as small doses of death. Would you agree with that statement? I would, because it doesn't matter the weakest, tiniest, littlest disease, if you don't have an immune system, will kill you. Right? We've established that medically. God gave you an immune system, gave your body an immune system, so that it could fight off sicknesses and diseases. Kind of makes you think God wants you healed, right? If he gave you an immune system, right? So, if sickness and disease is basically death, just in small form, is God death or is God life? Okay. So God's not handing out sickness and disease. So then the question is, well, if I read in Deuteronomy, if I read in Exodus, if I read in some of these books of the law, how the Lord will put the plagues of Egypt on you, if you go back and read it, first of all, it's if you don't obey God's word, basically. If you don't obey all that is written in the law, then Deuteronomy 28, all of these things will come upon you. And that's actually the better translation is God's stating a fact. This is what's going to happen to you. If you stay within the boundaries of my word, like what we talked about last session, you're going to be healed, you're going to be blessed going out, you're going to be blessed coming in, you're going to be blessed in your store, you're going to be blessed in your children, you're going to be blessed all these different ways, right? But if you don't stay within the boundaries of my word, then this stuff will happen. God's not putting things on you. He's just explaining this is what's going to happen if you go. It's like telling your kid, you stick your hand in the flame of the candle, it's going to burn. You're not burning your kid, right? I hope not. That's the better translation. Like I said, King James is good. It's not perfect. And if you go back actually to the Hebrew or to the Greek, if you're looking at the Septuagint translation of the Old Testament, there is a difference between the active voice of a verb and the permissive voice of a verb. And a lot of these things are written in the permissive voice where God is permitting this to happen, not he's doing it. Does that make some sense? Because our God is good. And I stand by that. In him is light, and in him is no darkness at all. There is no shadow of turning in God, right? So God doesn't put stuff on people. And the other thing to remember is, in the Old Testament, God was dealing with a carnal people. These people weren't saved. These people weren't filled with the Spirit of God. These people were not new creations. He's dealing with a carnal people, so he has to deal with carnal ways. People ask me all the time, what about, why did the children of Israel have to slaughter the Amalekites and the Canaanites and the Jebusites and the Hivites and all these different ites? Why did God tell the Israelites to kill them all? And I say to them, look, nowadays we're new creations. We have the Spirit of God. We can deal with demons. We can deal with spirits and command them to go. We can bind them to keep them from doing things. They didn't have that capability back then. If there was a nation that was doing evil and was going to affect the children of Israel, the only way you could get rid of that evil is to get rid of that nation. That's why God would command people like Samuel and Saul and the Amalekites. Kill them all. Every man, woman, and child, from the king down to the least. All the animals. There's nothing good in the Amalekites. Does that make some sense? Okay. Okay, now we're up to session 4, page 39. Why did Jesus heal? Let me get something up here. I can think of some reasons why that are incorrect, why Jesus healed. Did Jesus heal to show himself, to show everybody that he was God? No. Because if he healed to show people that he was God, then the apostles were God too because they healed when he sent them out, right? And not just the apostles, but the 70 disciples healed, and they must have been God too because they went out healing. And in fact, not just the 70 disciples, but even this one guy that has no name, but he was praying for people and getting results, and the disciples told Jesus, he's doing this and he's not even part of us, and Jesus said, leave him alone. He's doing a good work. Don't mess with him. He must be God too. So clearly, Jesus was not showing himself to be God by healing people. Jesus, would you agree with me that Jesus was the express image of the Father? Yes. Right. What does that mean, express image? The exact reproduction of the Father. When you looked at Jesus, you saw the Father. That's what Jesus said in the Gospel of John. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father, right? So if we've seen, let's look at what the Father is like. And I'm just going to go to the book of Psalms. This is not in your manual. So if you want to write these down, you can. Psalm 40, verse 11, do not withhold your compassion from me, O Lord. May your loving kindness and your truth always guard me. Have mercy, Psalm 50, verse 23, have mercy on me, O God, according to your loving kindness, according to the abundance of your compassion, blot out my transgressions. Psalm 72, verse 13, may he have compassion on the poor and needy and save the lives of the needy. Psalm 78, verse 38, but he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity and did not destroy them. Psalm 86, but you, O Lord, are a God full of compassion and gracious, slow to anger and abundant in mercy and truth. Are you seeing a pattern here? Our God is a God of compassion. So what is compassion? The best way, people confuse compassion and sympathy a lot of times. And the best way for me to explain what the difference between compassion and sympathy is I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise ship or if you were in the Navy or on a ship, but just if you can picture yourself on a ship out in the middle of the ocean, somebody falls overboard. Oh, they're yelling, they're in the water, maybe they can swim, maybe they can't, we don't know. Compassion is to run, grab that life preserver with a rope, throw it out there to him, hold on to the rope, he grabs the life preserver, you pull him out of the water, or you get other people to help you. That's compassion on that person who's drowning. Sympathy is jumping in the water with him and crying with him. Say, I know how you feel, this is awful. Which actually helps the person? Compassion. Compassion actually has action involved with it. Sympathy often is just a feeling. You know, I understand how you feel. We had a president once who used to tell people he knows how they feel. I don't know if he ever did. But compassion sees a problem and wants to correct it, wants to help, wants to make things right. Or as Shane said, wants to make God's will on the earth the way it is in heaven. Jesus came, it says, Jesus did not heal to prove he was God because he did not function as God on the earth. And I don't know, some people realize that, some people don't. It says he emptied himself and only operated in what was available to a man in right relationship with God. And that comes from Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 through 8. Jesus, being in the form of God, thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, it says in King James, and took on him the form of a servant. But to make himself of no reputation is translated better as emptied. Those of you who have Dake Bibles at home, Dake does a tremendous job of explaining exactly what that means. Jesus emptied himself of all that was God so that he could come down here as the Son of Man. Psalm 115, verse 16 says, "The heavens belong to the Lord, but the earth has he given to the children of men." If Jesus came down here as God, which he could legally do because he created this earth, but he also said in Genesis 1:26 that he gave this earth dominion of it over to man. And then as I just read in Psalm 115, he's given the earth to the children of men. He had to come as a son of man, not a son of God. He was the Son of God. He was the eternal, begotten of the Father. But he came as the Son of Man, and what that means is his life that he lived was the life of a new creation man, because there was no sin in his life. He was not descended from Adam. He was in the lineage of Adam, which made him a son of man, but he was not descended from Adam. Is that clear? Yes. So he... Wait, say that again? He was of the lineage of Adam. I think you can see that in Matthew chapter 1 or 2. But he was not descended from Adam because he was born of the Holy Ghost, right? So because he was not descended from Adam, he was not filled with, Adam's nature, Adam's character, the sin nature that came on man. He was a new creation from the start, without sin. We'll get into this. The nice thing about doing the DHT is you get some of the new man and some of mind renewal and some of SWAT all wrapped into one seminar here, so at no extra charge. But Jesus emptied himself and took on the form of a servant. That word servant, oftentimes Paul uses that to refer to himself, usually in the first 1 or 2 verses of each of his epistles. He refers to himself as the servant of God, and the actual translation in the Greek is bondslave. He is owned by God. Jesus took on the form of a bondslave, just like us. It says he was like us in all things except without sin, right? He was subject to all the same temptations we were. Not just 3 temptations in Luke chapter 4. He was subjected to every temptation that we are subject to, but without sin. So he is able to live a life that he could turn around and say, this is available to you. You can do these works. In fact, greater works than these, because I am going to my Father. Right? You can do these works. It sounds funny, but Jesus really is the first Christian. He was the first person to live a Christian life in its entirety, in its fullness. He lived full of the Holy Ghost, full of the Spirit of God, radiating that out, letting it flow through him wherever he went. Out of his belly flowed rivers of living water. He could say that because he knew it was true. It was true within himself. He could see it. He could feel it. That's what he was living. And part of that, rivers of living water, is compassion. Let's look at Matthew chapter 9, verse 35 there on page 39. And Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them, because they fainted and were scattered abroad as sheep having no shepherd. Then said he unto his disciples, the harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out, and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease. Jesus, it says, he had compassion on the multitude. And that compassion, Paul talks about it as bowels of mercy. It's from the very innermost part of your being is actually moved with compassion. It yearns. It's being drawn out. Something is being drawn out of you when you're being moved with compassion. Matthew 14:14, and Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. Matthew 20:29, and as they departed from Jericho, a great multitude followed him. And behold, 2 blind men sitting by the wayside, and when they heard that Jesus passed by, cried out, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And the multitude rebuked them, because they should hold their peace. But they cried the more, saying, Have mercy on us, O Lord, thou Son of David. And Jesus stood still and called them, and said, What will ye that I shall do unto you? And they said unto him, Lord, that our eyes may be opened. Now it's interesting, they cried out for mercy, but to them mercy meant healing. Amen. So Jesus had compassion on them, touched their eyes, and immediately their eyes received sight, and they followed him. Sherry was up here talking about outreach in life teams. And one of the things she said that I hope you caught was people can feel compassion. People can know when you're doing this out of compassion or you're doing it for some other reason. People can feel it. They can see it in you. They know it. They know what it feels like. And when he had compassion on the multitude, it says, Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest, that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. Send forth is to, the exact translation of the Greek is to cast out, to eject, to throw out laborers into the harvest. Jesus spoke another parable about laborers and a harvest. We have friends that live in the middle part of this country, up in South Dakota, Minnesota, that area, Iowa. And they're farmers. And I don't know if there are any farmers in here or come from farm background. When harvest time hits, it's all hands on deck, right? Because you've got a very short time to bring that harvest in before it's worthless, before it's gone. You've got a very short time, so you need everybody. And Jesus spoke a parable about Lord of the harvest going out into the marketplace for early in the morning and hiring everybody that was available. And if you read that parable, he keeps going out every few hours, and he keeps finding more people that are standing around. And he says, come work, and I'll pay you what I think is right. One of the interesting things in that parable is everybody in that story ended up working. And we don't know if that was enough people. He was going out the 11th hour looking for more people to get into the harvest. And some people will try and extrapolate this or interpret this as, well, we're living in the 11th hour and we're entering it. And that may or may not be true, but I know for a fact we don't have enough people in the harvest. That's really the moral to that story. There was not enough people there to bring that harvest in. He had to keep going and keep going and keep going to get more and more people. And Jesus was saying the same thing right here. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he would cast out people into the harvest. We need more people out there in the fields, because the fields don't say it's 3 months to harvest. Harvest time is now. The fields are white to harvest, he says in another place, right? Yeah. Mark 1, verse 40. There came a leper to him, beseeching him, kneeling down to him and saying unto him, if you will, you can make me clean. Interesting statement. If you will, you can make me clean. He knew Jesus could. He knew Jesus had the power to do it. The only question in the leper's mind was Jesus willing to make me clean? Me clean. Was he willing to make me clean? He said, if you will, I know you can make me clean. And Jesus, moved with compassion, put forth his hand, touched him. You don't do that with lepers. There's a famous story from David Hogan. He was praying for somebody out in the jungles of Mexico. He was going to preach, and the pastor said, there's a guy over there by the tree, and all he saw was just this blanket. And he looks, pulls the blanket aside, and he says, the worst smell he ever smelled in his life. And he saw these two eyes in the darkness, buried in the blanket. And he put the blanket back, and he went back and talked to the pastor and said, what is that? He says, that's a leper. He wants you to pray for him. And he said, okay. Usually he prays for people after the service, but he thought, I'm going to do this now. He went back, pulled the blanket back, saw the two little eyes again, and took a deep breath, reached his hand down, and he said he touched the leper, and his hand kept going into this goo. And he said, didn't matter to me. He commanded healing. Then he asked the pastor for a bucket of soap and water, because he was going to cleanse this leper. He wasn't going to back off. A few weeks later, he's back at this location again, preaching again, and they're setting up the stuff to preach, and there's this young man sitting on the front row, all nicely dressed and everything. And he sees him, but he doesn't pay too much attention because he's trying to set up his pulpit and the other things. And finally, the young man says, "Hi, do you remember me?" And he said, "No, but I meet a lot of people. Who are you?" I said, "I'm the leper that you prayed for 3 weeks ago." And David Hogan said, "I looked at him, and it hit me. I'm looking at a nose that's 3 weeks old." So I grabbed it. Jesus put forth his hand and touched him and said unto him, "I will. I will." And that verb in the Greek, "I will," means it is my desire, it is my character, I am willing now, and I am always willing. Be thou clean. And as soon as he had spoken, immediately the leprosy departed from him, and he was clean. Jesus moved by compassion. That's how he healed. Or that's why he healed. We'll talk about how he healed in a minute. Okay. We have the first of a few sacred cows here. And Shane kind of already touched on this. Matthew 17, 14, 20 to 21. And I'm going to go through this a little bit quickly because, as I said, Shane already touched on it. This is the case of when the man brought his son, who was lunatic, sore vexed. Oftentimes he falls into the fire, into the water. He brought him to his disciples. The disciples could not cast out the spirit. And there was a big problem. There was a big crowd. Jesus answered, "I brought him to thy disciples. They could not cure him." Jesus answered and said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me." Who was Jesus talking to there? Right, the disciples. Jesus never rebuked someone coming to him for healing. It's just not there in the Gospels. He often rebuked the disciples for if they ever had a lack of faith. You know, if they were in the boat in the storm, he says, "Oh, ye of little faith, what's wrong with you? Why couldn't you just get up here and tell the storm to be still?" So Jesus rebuked the devil. He departed out of him. The child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, "Why could not we cast him out?" Jesus said unto them, "Because of your unbelief." 4 words. Remember, this is simple. 4 words, because of your unbelief. It's not more complicated than that. First answer is always the best answer, right? Jesus said, "For verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, you shall say to this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. Howbeit, this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting." And that last verse is in italics. It may or may not be in italics in your King James Version Bible. The reason is this appears in some copies of Matthew in the original Greek and does not appear in others. For the most part, it does not appear there. That same verse appears in Mark in the same account. We've got it over in Mark 9. Verse 28, "And when he was come into the house, his disciples asked him privately, why could not we cast him out? And he said, this kind comes up forth by nothing but by prayer and fasting." That's the only real place where we see it. We know it's there in the gospel, is in the Gospel of Mark. Jesus could not have scolded the disciples for not fasting when he told the Pharisees, "My disciples are not going to fast," right? He told them, I said, as long as the bridegroom is here, the children of the bridegroom or the children of they're not going to fast, right? So what was the prayer and fasting talking about? It says, because of your unbelief. So what does the prayer and fasting have to do with the unbelief? Well, it tends to drive out unbelief. Prayer and fasting. You're just as Pastor Shane said, you're telling your body what to do. You're dictating terms to your body. That will drive out unbelief. What was that? Prayer and fasting, rather than just moseying along on your everyday life, if you're deciding you're going to pray, set aside specific time or an additional time of prayer and an additional time of fasting for a particular thing, that's fine. Paul fasted. Lots of the people in the New Testament fasted, but they didn't fast to get something done. They fasted to kind of cleanse their minds, cleanse their thinking of all of this other stuff that tends to clutter it. When you start, I don't often go to Dave Ramsey as the Gospel of Dave Ramsey, but he's got some important points every now and then. One of the things he's noticed, when people start getting serious about getting out of debt and they start dieting about their debt, they're controlling their debt, how much they spend, how much they do, they tend to lose weight. Especially if they wanted to lose weight, because they tend to be disciplined in every area of their life once they start applying discipline in one area. So the prayer and fasting you start disciplining your body, that will start disciplining your mind as well. Does that make some sense? Yes. Okay. Okay, let's take a break. Miss Brenda?